VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. We have 1 week of training camp in the books, and we haven't talked to our great friend Dakota since April 21st, I believe, was the last time we chatted. So we got 3 months of catching up to do. Foremost, how are you on this lovely Wednesday?
I'm good. I'm good. Just graduated college, so riding
Boom.
that high. I got a Kirk Cousins primetime purple jersey from some amazing people. My friend Mark and Amity, on Twitter. So, kind of wearing that to bed every single night because what else am I gonna do? Got to get the lucky juices going.
Right on. Yeah, by popular demand, the folks, speaking of Twitter or the X app, folks were asking for you to come back on the show. And for anybody that wonders, she has an open invitation to come on the show. And I was just telling her off air, she could message me at 4 a.m. on Saturday night and be like, "Hey, I want to come on tomorrow morning." I'd be like, "Cool, let's record." So she has a rolling open invitation, and we're going to effectuate that chat right now because it has been about 3.5 months since we did talk. We have a draft now in the books. We have a mini camp and a week of training camp. So I want to know, before we get into some of the nitty gritty, I know you're usually optimistic, and I'm going to guess your answer is optimistic, but what is your overall vibe since the draft, mini camp, and now training camp about the 2023 Vikings?
Well, first and foremost, the fact that we've got Daniil, I'm calmed down a little bit more now. That was really for me, that was kind of the biggest thing, especially since we lost just a massive amount of our veterans. And, I'm not one of those people on Twitter who is freaking out too much about it, as much as everybody knows I love Adam Thielen. It was time to part ways, especially with some of the other guys. So I think Daniil sticking around has really calmed me down. I am loving what I'm seeing from Addison. Hopefully he can bring the 140 on the field, not just on like Dale and what was it like? I don't remember what highway.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can bring that speed onto the field. And so far, from what I've seen from training camp, it seems like he can. Um, you know, I'm defensively, despite the fact that we have Daniil, I'm still hesitant to say anything good. All the respect in the world to Brian Flores, but I mean, seeing the unit that we had last year, how I don't, in my mind, I can't see them playing in a mid, like, I don't know. I'm a little worried defensively for lack of a better term.
And that's fair because right now the Vikings and we, the fans, we're banking on Flores doing more with less experience. You've got a lot of faster, meaner, hungrier dudes, but most of the veteran talent that we knew and loved, Patrick Peterson, Dalvin Tomlinson, Eric Kendricks, they went elsewhere. So I'm right there with you. It's either going to be, well, this is Captain Obvious stuff. It's either going to be great and a breath of fresh air. It's going to be like, oh God, we let go of all those guys. What'd you think was going to happen? Or it's going to live somewhere in the middle. And I think most of us are content with somewhere in the middle because we already showed last year that we could win 13 damn games with this bend but don't break bullshit. And the sky can be the limit if they can perhaps, be in the middle of the league and get with
Right.
the times. Speaking of 2023, we asked Alec Lewis from The Athletic yesterday about an X Factor player. And an X Factor player, in my estimation, it's interpretive. It's not Justin Jefferson. Well, of course, he's the X Factor. He's the league's best receiver. And it's not Kirk Cousins because we know what Kirk's going to be. He's going to throw us 30 touchdowns like clockwork, hopefully guide them to another division title. But so I want to know, in your estimation, an X Factor player that if this player really blossoms or plays well, then this team is going to the postseason. Or if he flounders, yeah, and we're probably looking at 8 and 9 or some shit like that. Who is that guy?
For me, for me personally, it's not actually a player. I think for me, it's actually Brian Flores.
Okay, wonderful.
I think really it all has to do with like what you said. How can he make more with less? And from seeing the notes that I've been seeing from the training camp and what little, the Vikings are posting or what I'm able to grab out here in California, I've been hearing really good things about how he's been playing specifically like Harrison Smith and Daniil Hunter and some of the more seasoned guys that we have on the team and how they're sitting comfortably where they should have been versus where they were in the Donatel system.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, for me, it all really falls on him. There's a lot of people out there, and I believe I was one of them that was saying that if our defense can actually change last season, we were going to go far. We couldn't adjust. We lost to the Giants in the usual way that we've been winning all season. And so if he is unable to adjust in the ways that he needs to adjust throughout the season, if he is stubborn and sticks to his guns, sort of similar to how I feel Donatel was playing, I think he could really make or break us. Player-wise on the field, I personally would probably have to say either the Hawkinson or Addison. I think, TJ coming into the season, mid-season last year, he did really great, but I'm interested to see how he plays with us for a full season. And clearly he is committed. He is dedicated from what I've seen at training camp. And then, Addison being a new member, how he's going to fit in with the squad, whether he's going to take something similar to what KJ was taking last year, and KJ now being the wide receiver 2. I really think it all falls on sort of our more receiving core, and specifically those 2 guys, and how they're able to not only get open for Kirk if JJ's in, double, triple coverage, but how exactly they can maneuver themselves to allow that double, triple coverage on JJ to then disperse over there, leaving JJ open to do those amazing catches that we know he can do.
I have this vision, like this pipe dream vision, that if Addison is, some semblance as good as Jefferson, wouldn't it would be so cool to look up in week 7, week 8 and be like, oh my God, all of these guys, Jefferson, Hawkins, and Addison, are contributing. And it would, it would have that, like, almost like the Rams from the old days with Kurt Warner, that potential. Now that's all a pipe dream. Like, Addison will probably have a regular rookie season, 700 yards or something like that. And I like your Flores answer, because I think a lot of our enthusiasm is based on his resume, his credibility. And because he's done it before and he's an aggressive thinker, I think we have more optimism. Like for example, let's say during this defensive coordinator search, let's say they got rid of Donatel, and then they hired Brad Jones from the assistant linebacker coach from the Houston Texans. We'd all be like, oh God, this defense is going to suck, because based on the personnel, we wouldn't trust Brad Smith or whoever it would be to fix the defense. But because Flores has a spine of doing this with the Patriots, the Dolphins, and then last year with the linebackers and Steelers, I think he can act as that X factor. Now on Twitter, when the group wanted you back on the show, I think you said you wanted to reveal some of your Kirk Cousins thoughts. You've got him in your background, so I'm going to guess that stemmed in part because of the Netflix docuseries. You watched it, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Probably binged it. Tell me your feedback, or what surprised you about that show?
Well, so first, I watched it in not a normal way that, most people I saw were like binging it and whatnot. I live with my grandparents right now, and so we're very much like a 1 or 2 episode a night kind of people. So, and I personally think that was kind of the way to do it, because then it felt like I was a little bit in football season because of how much they show of the games. But also coming from, a film creative background, I overall think that the story that they were trying to tell with all of the players was absolutely phenomenal. The editing to ensure that, these 3 guys, whether you love them, you hate them, regardless, you still felt something for them. Going into it, I was a little surprised that Mariota, of all people, was selected to do this the series. And I was like, it's Marcus Mariota. Like, why do I care? Now I care. We finished the series, and I was like, I hate that whenever I see him play, I'm gonna want to cheer for him, even if he's, isn't he on the he's on the Eagles now. Like, I hate Eagles, but it's like, dang, Marcus Mariota, like, I can't hate him. I've always had massive respect for Kirk Cousins. I think you and I are both kind of on the Kirk Cousins love club. And so I was really excited when they announced him, and I think they did a really good job of sort of showing why he deserves to be where he is, because everybody and their mom knows about the disrespect that he gets on social media, the disrespect that he gets from even, the NFL in their various different TV shows and series and whatnot. And so I think Netflix did a really good job of showing how hard he works, how much he deserves to be where he is. And in my opinion, I think they kind of created a beautiful underdog story going into this year that's going to make people who aren't necessarily Vikings fans want him to reach the Super Bowl. Everybody now is probably going to to bet on this Pat Mahomes Kirk Cousins meetup in the Super Bowl. That's my dream scenario personally. But I think overall, I genuinely think that this was probably the best thing to happen for Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings, especially with how much of the hatred that we got last year, how much of the doubt we got from the overall NFL community last year. And so I think going into this year, more people, they're going to have higher expectations of us, because why wouldn't they? But I also think they're going to be a lot more optimistic in how they see the Minnesota Vikings, specifically Kirk Cousins, especially when he even talks about the O-line issues, which I was always so nervous every single game, and my grandparents were like, wow, he's getting hit. And I'm like, yeah, but consider the numbers he put up. And they're like, I never even thought about that. Like, he was the most hit quarterback last year, and yet the numbers he put up were comparable to that of Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen. I mean, he's the 6th highest ranking quarterback voted on by NFL players, for Christ's sake. So I also personally just want to say for the viewers out there, I think Pat Mahomes' wife is lovely. I think she's amazing. I hope that she and I are best friends someday. I was seeing some people like throw her some shade. It's just, she's got a big personality, I consider myself to have a fairly big personality, and I just love how passionate and excited she is about her husband and how much she wants him to succeed, but also be safe, and how much of a fan she is too. I think that's incredible. Plus the fact that we did get confirmation that Kirk Cousins shops at Kohl's, I think will forever help me rest easy.
Yeah, confirmed I guess it wasn't even really a meme. It was just a tweet that somebody said with the Coles cash. I would say that based on Cousins been in the league since 2012. I would say thanks to that documentary, if there was such thing as approval ratings for football players, I would say that his approval rating is probably at an all-time high, mainly because they revealed the personal side. And think about this. These 3 quarterbacks were selected before the season. That's why they had the crews following them. You had the Super Bowl champion by accident. They followed him. Yeah. You had the guy that orchestrated the biggest comeback in NFL history, plus the Bills game. And then you had a guy who got benched and said, I don't want to work here anymore, or implied that he was pissed and didn't want to be a part of it. Think about the gold. The producers were probably like, oh my goodness. This is just, I mean, it was like they picked the 3 perfect dudes for storylines, and it almost will be hard to follow, even though there's a lot of quarterbacks turning them down heading into this season. It's pretty wild that they got the biggest comeback in NFL history guy, the Super Bowl winning guy, and the guy who kind of went AWOL when he got benched guy. They got pretty lucky in terms of their casting, so to speak.
Oh yeah, and the fact that it was still fairly, like, just watching it, no matter how you felt about, obviously, but no matter how you felt about any of the quarterbacks, I love that the documentary went in with a very neutral setting. They had no opinion on any of the quarterbacks going in, and I think Peyton Manning definitely, and in my opinion, again, as a filmmaker, if this isn't up for some award coming award season, whether the Golden Globes, Emmys, etc., I would genuinely be very disappointed. Again, from a film creator standpoint, it was just a very well thought out, very well plotted, very well edited docuseries that genuinely I'm excited to see if they do again next year. I would absolutely love it if they followed Joe Burrow. I know a lot of girls on TikTok would really like it if they followed Joe Burrow. I have to say this right here right now. Joe Burrow's fine. He kind of looks like the kid from Home Alone. I'm more of a Josh Allen, Kirk Cousins guy. I think they're both very cute. So you have that on tape now.
Yep, it is documented. We are 39 days from the start of the regular season. The Vikings started the regular season. So with that afoot, 17 games on the docket, 8 home games, 9 road games. Which game are you most looking forward to?
Well, I there's a couple. The first one I'd have to say is probably the Buccaneers game, because it will be my second time ever going to US Bank Stadium, first ever season opener. Very excited to be back in Minnesota. But I think overall, I'm very excited for the Chiefs game. Like I said, in my head, that is dream scenario A for a Vikings Super Bowl. I'm excited to see how the teams match up. I'm excited to see how we, with the unit that we have, specifically defensively, can handle the Chiefs offense. I'm excited to see what changes to the O-line KOC made that'll have us be able to handle the Chiefs defense. And I'm kind of excited to see a Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson matchup, some of the best tight ends in the NFL. Like, I don't know. To me, that is the game of the year.
It's cool that the two games you pointed out, if you look at the schedule, so week 1, I think everybody is ultra excited. That's also the easiest game of the year on paper. Even though the Bucks roster isn't horrible, everybody looks at them and sees Brady retired and they're like, oh yeah, they're 30th best team in the league. I get it, but they're not horrendous. But on the Vikings schedule, that's as easy as it gets. And then the other game you pointed out is probably the toughest it gets because Mahomes from the documentary will square off against Cousins. All right, the last thing I got for you, and perhaps this will be redundant based on some of the answers you've given, but if this is the truth, this is the truth. What is the team's biggest weakness as of August 2nd?
The O-line. The
O-line.
O-line.
Oh, the O-line. I thought you were going to go defense.
That too, but for me, where to begin? No, to me, it's the O-line. I kind of knew that this question was coming, so I was saving it in my back pocket. The offensive line, as of right now, specifically with who we've been having visit our training camp, to me is the blaring, like it is the really tiny hole in our Death Star. To me, our O-line is, that 1 in a million shot that Luke Skywalker takes, that last year everybody was apparently Luke Skywalker. But to me, I think if we cannot alter the wrongs of last season's offensive line, what's the point? Kirk Cousins was able to do, like I said, some insanely incredible things despite being the most pressured quarterback in the NFL. What can he do when he has a stable pocket? What can he do when he has time for his wide receivers to really run their routes? So for me, I don't think what we achieved last season is going to be nearly as possible, especially like you said, with such a hard season that we have coming up. We've got it a little bit easy, like you said, with the Buccaneers. I'd even say personally a little bit with the Panthers too. No hate to the Panthers or Adam Thielen, but I'm not scared of them. But with some of the teams we have to go up against, I'm scared that with the O-line that we have, how are we going to show the world that, yep, this is the same exact 13-4 Minnesota Vikings. This is the greatest comeback in history, Minnesota Vikings, And I go into every season thinking this is going to be the year, as cautiously optimistic as I can. But, I personally think that, yes, this can be the year. I think we finally have all the right ingredients, but it's a matter of how exactly do we fix this recipe that we started to perfect last year, but know that, it calls for 3 eggs, but 3 eggs doesn't work. So how do we adjust, So if the O-line can't be fixed, if, going into the first couple of games, specifically against the Eagles, we see that pocket just deteriorates instantly. I don't know. It has me nervous. I'm sure it has, Kirk Cousins' wife nervous. So if we can't fix the O-line, what are we doing?
And I think tongue in cheek, what we're talking about here is 2 guards and a center, because assuming Brian O'Neill's already and healed up by week 1, you've got the hard part taken care of with Darisaw and O'Neill. Most teams would salivate over having that stability on the bookends of the offensive line, but right in the middle. And this has been the same damn thing. Every year I go into a season, I'm right there with you. I'm like, all right, well, if the guards in the center are any good. And last year, they didn't scrape the bottom of the barrel like they had during the Zimmer Vikings, but just because they weren't horrible doesn't mean that they were sufficient or good. And so now I think the next step is, to your point, they get better. That's why Dalton Reisner came for a visit, and maybe he'll sign, is that you want to get richer. And this is a perk of employing an offense first head coach, is that he should, in theory, get it. Whereas with Zimmer, we understood after about year 5, like, well, they're not really, they don't put a whole lot of priority. They draft a lot of guys. We'll give them that. But when it comes to the guard spot, they're like, we'll figure it out. All right, Dakota, where can viewers find you on Twitter and TikTok?
So on Twitter and TikTok, you can find me at Western Dakota. The one that I am most known for is unfortunately privated now, just because I have graduated. I have to seem somewhat professional, unfortunately. If anybody knows me, they know how hard that is for me. But you can find me at Western Dakota. I also am hopefully going to be bringing back my Vikings Twitch channel this year, so that will
Sweet.
also be at Western Dakota on Twitch as well.
Wonderful. All right. Well, you hit me up or you have your friends hit me up so I don't forget. So, because in my estimation, when I have you guests on, besides Josh Fry, because he's a coworker of mine, I never want to annoy or pester anybody by asking folks to come on. So I'll reiterate, you got an open invitation when you want to hop on and spew some thoughts, you get at me. And if I don't hear from you in about 4 or 5 weeks, I'll hit you up. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
All right. We will talk to you within about 4 or 5 weeks. All right.
All right, sounds good. See you later,
Take it
Dustin.
easy.